our work right now on the planet is to bring honoring and sanctity to the invisible just as much as the visible. The invisible results are things like feeling good, things like feeling connected, things like our health, our well-being, a feeling of joy, pleasure.
Embodiment can't be faked. Once you're in an open state where you actually can see through a clear lens, you're not clouded by fear, you're not clouded by the amygdala, you're not clouded by the society's news and all the fear-based stuff, and you're just with you. Then you get to decide where you think we actually are.
It is possible to navigate pain with grace.
Energy is information. We're here to experience the full spectrum.
That worthiness is hard for you. There's nothing wrong with you. It is a muscle that we kind of have to learn how to access. You are not disempowered, and you have power in every area of your life all the time.
I believe that chronic illness is an opportunity for us to heal.
Health, it's a choice. Listening to your body if you so choose.
My prayer for the world would be that they would know the infinite love of God.
Aloha and welcome to the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast with your host, Jen Mons. Join me each week for soul-inspired, conscious conversations around awakening to your soul purpose through 5-element well-being. Thank you so much for joining in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Body and Soul Wisdom Podcast. Today's topic is something that I know is going to speak to a lot of you. And for those of you that have been listening to this show, or even if you're new, you probably have heard the thread of spiritual growth throughout my podcasts and even in my retreats and my group programs and private mentorships. Spiritual growth and spiritual well-being is one of the 5 pillars, the 5 elements of 5-element wealth: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial, the path to living well, which is what this podcast is about. So today we're going to talk about the trap of spiritual perfectionism. It's something that I see so many people, men and women, get trapped in, and I myself have witnessed my own self being trapped in the persona, the idea of what we think it means to be spiritual, which is really just bringing us back to the ego. And a spiritual path is all about dismantling that ego so that we can be an open, clean slate for receiving divine love, pure consciousness and energy from God. And this isn't a episode about religion. This is an episode about pure presence and love, because that's what we were created to be. I'm going to talk about things such as our diet, our physical well-being, vegan versus someone who consumes animal protein. I'm going to share my journey of 30 years of being a vegetarian and even exploring being a vegan and the impacts that it had on my health and well-being and the things that I taught and where I'm at now. I'm going to talk about religion versus spirituality and science, and, tie those 3 together and how I've navigated my own journey and give you some tips and some awareness, just maybe where you are in your journey right now. I'm going to dive into Ascension versus Embodiment and invite you into that conversation, which will give you an idea of, again, where you are in your own spiritual journey. poverty versus prosperity consciousness and how that shows up through our actions, through our limiting beliefs, our saboteurs, and how we can increase our capacity to receive and also amplify our values and create that ripple effect into the world when we truly step into that prosperity consciousness and we allow that prosperity consciousness to flow through us, and we don't make it about us. We don't make it even about money. We don't make it about what we're here to teach, but we step into that true frequency of trust. We're going to talk about some energy language and what that means for an empath, and also in the spiritual world, how to notice and recognize and even avoid spiritual narcissism, because there is a lot of that in communities of spiritual growth, and how to be aware of your own journey and noticing our own spiritual narcissistic tendencies when we are evolving on a spiritual path. And then lastly, we're going to talk about purpose versus passion as the path to prosperity. This is something that I talk about in my prosperity course. It's the invitation to notice that the path to prosperity requires both, and in that sense also requires discipline and devotion, which is a balance of the masculine and feminine energies. All of this, in some way, the duality of each of these is really presenting to us the masculine and feminine energies and how they impact our decision making. So let's begin with what's on our plate in spiritual perfectionism, the trap of spiritual perfectionism, and what it's teaching you or what it's potentially keeping you from. I'm going to begin by just sharing my own journey. Many of you know that I began coaching women in 2010 in fitness and health as an integrative health coach. After leaving corporate, after having a health crisis, which was a near-death experience through pregnancy-induced liver failure to my oldest daughter, who just turned 18 yesterday. So celebrating my rebirth day and the end of my second 9-year cycle. And the path of my life that was laid out before me because of that completely life-changing moment invited me to step into recovering my health and well-being. And I did this through becoming trained and certified in various modalities of physical health through the International School of Detoxification and Healing Arts, by learning detoxification, through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, by becoming a holistic health coach, through functional medicine at Caden Institute, in understanding gut health. And so I led a integrative health coaching practice for about 7 years, fully based on fitness and holistic nutrition. And in that 7-year time period, around 2014, I experienced a second integrative health crisis, which actually was related to my dad and our energetic bonding and cord. And many of you know that he has recently transitioned into another dimension from this physical dimension of February of this year. And I'm curious and excited, but not attached, to see what will become of our new relationship. So as someone who led many detoxification programs, clean eating programs, fitness and health and well-being nutrition programs for many years for women, my approach and what I believed in was based on eating right for your bio-individuality, which is something I learned at the Institute of Integrated Nutrition. It's eating right for your belief system, your body, your lifestyle, your genetic makeup, your blood type, the whole thing. So it's no one diet works for anyone. You get to decide what works for you. But I did find a common theme of certain foods that created inflammation in the body, and understood that inflammation created acidosis, which was the underlying thread for dis-ease in the body. And one of my greatest teachers, Dr. Morse, through the International School of Detoxification, which is now the International School of Healing Arts, one of the things that I learned through our mentorship in school was that the body was very much energetic and not just physical. And so food had an energy and food had a frequency, and I experienced it in my own life. And how I can explain that to you as I was downloading in my experience and teaching is that fruits that grow on trees that are higher have higher vibration. Vegetables that are grown underground are very grounding. They have a lower energy. Vegetables that grow above the ground are slightly higher than neutral. And then there's the intelligence of, fungus and mushrooms and all of the superfoods that live in this integrated network underground, which is highly grounding, but also highly energetic in frequency and in intelligence that can help our bodies to heal, which we know as some superfoods and adaptogens. And then there is the consciousness or the energy of life form through animal protein. Once you consume an animal that is dead, the frequency of that particular food is flat. It's dead consciousness. And so that was my experience. And because of that, now I chose to become a vegetarian at age 14 and was a vegetarian for until about 6 months ago. And I'm 46 years old, so 31 years of vegetarian. Now, in that time period, I did have moments where I would choose to eat some chicken or turkey or fish. So I'd go from vegetarian to pescatarian, and I would also almost always consume eggs. So it was really just specifically red meat for the entire 31 years that I did not consume, and meat in general, white or red, that I didn't consume for much of that time. And here I am at 46 years old in a different phase of life, entering perimenopause, where I am very acutely aware that my body is asking for different things. My body is asking for red meat, which is an important part of what my body needs as an O blood type. And I had to go through some really deep, spiritual practices and belief systems around that. I thought for so many years I'd have to pray over the animal before I could actually eat it. And I tried that a couple times, and I would take a bite. Over the last couple of years, I would take a bite of red meat. And this is something that I truly, honestly struggled with. My body was asking for red meat, and my spiritual perfectionism in the belief that the consciousness, which I do believe, that the frequency of it wasn't something that my body wanted. And I even played with being a vegan that lasted about 6 months. I used to go around and teach raw food vegan workshops in 2014. My business was Healthy Beach Girl. And that's when I had my second health crisis. It was an energetic health crisis because my vibration and consciousness was so high when I was eating as a vegan. I was not grounded at all. I was very too psychically in tune. I was what people would refer to as living out of the body, sort of ascension, and it was very hard for me to stay grounded in my body and relationships, and it was almost like I wasn't completely fully experiencing the human experience. And so I realized, like, veganism, my natural energy state didn't need to be a vegan to feel that higher vibration. It wasn't a good fit for me. What I really needed was to be grounded. The genetics and the body and the blood type that I was born into, in fact, needs that grounded energy, because I'm naturally a very high energy person. I have a dosha of a Vata Pitta, and very much live in that airy, fiery state. And so about 6 months ago, I just made the decision, I just listened to my body, that it's just time for me to eat red meat. And I have a beautiful business accountability partner who is a financial advisor, and I'm going to just drop a little plug for her, Dinner with Katerina. She's French Italian, which is everything the opposite of how I've ever eaten. And I just asked her, would you help me to learn how to cook red meat in a way that I can enjoy it? It has to be tender. It has to be, healthy. It has to feel good. It has to be high quality. And she did that, and it changed my life because it gave me the resources and the knowledge to be able to empower me with the tools to cook red meat in a way that was serving me. And the gateway to that for several years was through bone broth. And I was trying to get collagen through bone broth. So I say that to say, if you're someone who is struggling with the spiritual aspect of the food that's on your plate, give yourself permission to sit in the stillness of your beliefs, or the persona, the ego that you've created around those beliefs. And that's really what this podcast is about, is that the spiritual path is completely dismantling the ego, and whatever we are attached to, whatever belief or person that we want to become, which you'll hear me say over and over again, make decisions based on the person you want to become. But the key is to release the attachment to what it says about you. The key is to release the ego or the persona, the idea of who you think you're going to be once you get there. And that is next level ego dismantling. So give yourself permission to really sit in stillness with what you're making your decision mean about you. And how can I, ask yourself, how can I create space for what I need right now? What is it that my body needs? What is it that I need? And how can I create space for that? And so I was able to do that, and I was able to be grateful. And I said this for so many years, but I didn't feel it. And until the moment that I was willing to feel it and not be attached to the spiritual ego of the knowing that I had gathered that food is energy and animal meat is a low vibration frequency. It's a higher frequency, of course, if it's raised on a farm and it's organic, but it is still a dead animal. It's not living fruit. It's not raw foods, which are living. There's an energy to raw foods that when you eat a lot of raw foods, you will live in a different energy frequency. And that may or may not work for your body. If you're a dosha kapha, that would probably be great for you. You might need more energy. If you're a Vata Pitta and you're very fiery and you're an O blood type like me and you've got a lot of energy and you have a high metabolism and you're probably also experiencing anxiety, you probably need grounding vegetables, which is where you can start. And I did that for many, many years. And you might even need, your body might need some nutrients from animal protein to ground you energetically. You might need that grounding energy. And it might be good for your health. The next thing I want to talk about is religion versus spirituality, what we learned versus what we know. And I feel like this is a conversation that comes up all the time, no matter what group program I'm teaching, whether it's 5-element wealth, whether it's building your prosperous retreat, or whether it's the prosperity course. Everyone is in a different place on their spiritual path at different times. And so there is no right or wrong about this. What I want to invite you to consider is, where are you stuck, or where are you trapped again in your ego, in the idea or the person that you think you're supposed to be based on the beliefs that you're choosing at that time? So what am I saying? A lot of what we have learned through religion, and I grew up in the Catholic religion, and I very much felt so connected to God and to Jesus my entire life without being taught anything. I would choose to go to church the entire day on Sunday, and then I had church youth group, and for many of those years, even in high school, some of those Sundays were spent, I would go to church by myself. And have, over the last 40 years, gone through such a canvas of colorful changes and integration on what that path has looked like. Everything from going all in completely into learning about other spiritual practices, becoming a yoga teacher, learning as much as I could about different spiritual teachers, to really come home to, what do I actually believe? What is my relationship with the divine feminine and the divine masculine? Where do I resist things that I've learned, and why? And what am I ready to welcome in without, again, having an attachment to what any of it means about me? And then there's the conversation of spirit versus science, which you may or may not know. I am a educated and trained marine mechanical engineer, so I am a very mathematical person. I love science. I love energy. I've learned and studied electrical engineering, which is something that you can't see, but you understand how it works. And spirit is, in some ways, the same thing. It's an energy and a language. Energy is the language of spirit, where we can receive messages intuitively through the electromagnetic field created by our heart about the people around us. And it's a frequency, it's an energy, and yet sometimes religious practices teach us that some of this is wrong. So each of us has to find our own way. And what I have learned is that it's important for us to stay committed to our own inner work, so that we can cleanse the ego and the spirit from attracting negative energy. And when we do, because we will, we look to that energy of God, that pure divine love, to lead us, and we surrender to trust and let ourselves be guided by something bigger than us, which is God's love. When we talk about the conversation of spiritual perfectionism, there's a lot of judgment around people who have religious beliefs, specifically Christianity, versus people who are spiritual, and what that even means to us. There are shamans and teachers, and I've been in the world of all of those. I've went through shaman training myself and disenrolled myself because I realized it wasn't a good fit for me. I've been on many spiritual retreats and participated in Native American practices of sweat lodges and medicine wheels and all kinds of beautiful ceremonies connected to Mother Nature, seeking my own personal truth. And in my own journey, personally found the most and experienced the most betrayal in deeply spiritual circles, because what I found is that many people are entering that space from a very wounded place and seeking something, and are in a place of projection. And so what I eventually realized after 10 years of navigating spiritual circles, and I'm not trying to talk anybody out of this, I'm simply sharing my personal experience, is that, like Rumi says, what you're seeking is seeking you. So there isn't really anything to seek. There's just a place of being. And I know some of you are listening because you're new to that spiritual journey and you feel the need to continue to seek that. And if that's where you are, that's okay. If you feel like there are experiences that you have to have in order to heal those parts of you, I understand. I've been there. And there will likely be a day where you'll come full circle to realize that there actually isn't anything to heal. That maybe part of your ego is keeping you small by thinking that you're broken and that there is something that you have to heal. And so this is where we can get trapped in that circle of spiritual perfectionism where we get addicted to healing. And I used to be a teacher of doing the shadow work. And although I love that, I now use it as a tool when it's necessary. But remember that the energy that you enter a relationship with is the energy that will expand. So when you enter a relationship with the energy of feeling that you're broken and need to be fixed, that is what is going to expand. Now, a good coach or a mentor is going to create that space for you to realize that, yes, there are little fragments of your life that need to become whole again. And a good coach or a mentor is going to help you to hold, I think of a flower that has shattered petals or shredded petals. And a good coach or a mentor is going to help you to see that is the whole of you. It doesn't have to be perfect. And is going to hold that vision of you until you're ready to receive it. And that coach or that mentor is going to help you embrace, accept, and receive you in your wholeness, the parts that feel broken but aren't. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. And every experience in our life is reflecting back to us our inner belief system, what we're ready for, and where we're ready to go and where we've been. And the next step that we get to make is the choice and where we want that to be. So whenever we notice judgments or resistance, those are really good places to look deeply and ask ourselves, what am I noticing about my beliefs or judgments about this person? What am I resisting or avoiding in this situation, and why? Those are often the places that we need to go. There are very different types of people in the world. If you're listening to this podcast, my guess is that you're the smaller percentage of people in the world that have a growth mindset. You're here because you're willing to gather tools and information to create change in your life because you know you have choice. And then a large majority of the people in the world have a very fixed mindset. They're stuck in the corporate world. They're stuck in their beliefs that they were born into: family, genetics, dis-ease, illness, and poverty. And that's where they're comfortable. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're not that person. You have a growth mindset. You are here to live your fullest expression. And so know that your choice, your spiritual path, what you learned about religious upbringings, your spiritual path, your wisdom, and the energy of your physical body, emotional body, mental body, the energy of your financial well-being, those are all the same. They're all connected. You get to choose what you want to believe about that and release the attachment to what it means about you. The third conversation I want to have around the trap of spiritual perfection is this idea, and I hear this all the time, ascension versus embodiment. When we're on a spiritual path, we do gather the tools to transcend lower vibrations, limiting thoughts and beliefs, which, by the way, what happens when you don't seek or think or believe that there are limiting beliefs? And I'm not talking about spiritual bypassing. I'm talking about the awareness without the attachment. Not making anything that you've experienced or anything that you're choosing to believe mean anything about you, because the minute you do that, you're back into ego consciousness. So ascension versus embodiment. Now, I had my own personal experience multiple times in this through the veganism, where I would literally have such a hard time, excuse me, energy shift. I always love sneezes and yawns and coughs, they're energy shifts. So having my own experiences of, well, first through my near-death experience and removing myself from my pain body after the birth of my first daughter is something that I'll never forget. The awareness and the knowing that pain is human. It's third dimensional, and we can actually remove ourselves from it. And I just went through this with the transition of my father, and this feeling and sensation and just this awareness of me watching him, this belief that he was struggling in his physical body with his health, and then just realizing that actually I was struggling with, because more than he was, because it was painful to watch him struggle in his physical health, but that he actually wasn't struggling as much as I was. And so really releasing any need to save him or keep him, and just to be in pure love and acceptance of his choice to be ready to leave his physical body. And that is a relationship that I've had with him for almost 10 years. When I thought I lost him the first time in 2014, which was also my second health crisis, but that story is for another day, which I've talked about on the podcast several times. And so the ability and awareness to recognize when your spiritual practices or your choices, such as eating very high vibrational foods, such as being purely vegan, or doing Kundalini breath work for 2 hours a day, or meditating for 20 minutes a day, which all of these things were my own personal practices on and off between the years of 2014 and 2018, and realizing, again, am I grounded, am I aligned, or am I avoiding and bypassing the pain of my physical human experience? And for me, that was the answer, was the more time that I spent in breath work and Kundalini and meditation and being vegan, I wasn't in my physical body. I was escaping the pain body. And I knew that because I did that when I had an out-of-body experience in 2006. And here's the other thing that I've said on the show before is that the human experience is pain, but it's also joy. And so when we have so many practices of ascension, because that's what we think we're supposed to do, we're missing out on the point of the embodiment of that higher consciousness in human form in this experience. And so I believe, having been through the feeling and the practices of ascension, I started with meditating with my eyes open so that I could be present while having that sort of nostalgic feeling, that flighty feeling of ascension beyond the human body and leaving that pain. I started meditating with my eyes open so that I could be grounded in the physical. experience. And then I learned over the years that these practices are important, but when we begin to embody these practices, when we become what we're chasing, when we become health, because we make good choices every day, when we become breath, because we breathe in and out of our belly consciously every day, when we become the meditation, when it becomes part of our life, rather than just the practice of something that we think we need to do to be the person that we think we need to be, that's next level spiritual growth. Is the embodiment and the presence and the being to where it's just what you are, not what you do. You become the practices, you become the beliefs because it's authentic and it's aligned, and it isn't something that you're trying to sell people on. And by the way, in today's world, this is a problem. This is a huge problem. It's a huge problem in the coaching industry. It's a huge problem with spiritual mentors who are telling you the thing that you want to hear so they can make money. They have no training, no understanding of ethics or boundaries in the world of coaching. They're not certified or trained as coaches. They don't understand what it actually means to create the space for people. They think because they're a yoga teacher, they've been to a couple of retreats, that now they're certified to lead you through a transformation. And this is a very delicate space. It's very intimate. It requires building a foundation of trust. It's why I created my retreat facilitator program, because I could see many women came to me after spending a lot of money on a coaching program to be in a mentorship with somebody who was really leading from a place of their own wounds. And the coaching program was about them and not the client. True coaching is all about listening, and it is specifically created around the individual. It's not about teaching somebody what has worked for you. That's mentorship. That's completely different. And so to be a leader, a retreat facilitator is a leader. You have to understand the boundaries and the ethics and the energetics of creating that sacred space. Just because you've trained in breathwork or yoga doesn't mean that you have the tools to lead somebody into transformation through a space at a retreat. I've been leading retreats since 2014, and I learned this through my own journey, through the commitment to becoming a facilitator, a breathwork facilitator, a sound healer, a yoga teacher, all the things, and realizing that training in one area doesn't give you the wisdom and the capacity to create space for something else. At the same time, when we talk about spiritual perfectionism, you don't have to have a certification and a training in everything to do something, but this is where you get to collaborate with people. It's knowing that balance of, I am in tune and I have a natural ability to do these things. I don't have to go get another certification. Coming from somebody who has over 15 certifications, that would be me. Dismantling the ego enough to know that who can I call in, whose expertise can I call in to collaborate with to really create a magical retreat. And then when doing that, noticing your own prosperity or money saboteur. You're not stepping into a relationship where you barter or you trade, but it's a very clean, ethical, create a contract, step into it as a professional, keep the energy and the communication super clear so that it isn't pure exchange of energy. Because remember, everybody has a different value for different things. And so that's why it's super important to have ethical contracts and open communication about expectations in any relationship that you enter into, whether it's a coaching client relationship, whether it's a collaboration relationship, whether you're trading services, or however you decide to move forward in your own business or in your personal growth. Keeping open and clear communication. So, although I love practices that help us to transcend, I believe that we are here to embody that higher consciousness in human form, and that's what we are here to do, to be the expression of God's love, and to be really clear, what was I created to be? Because that is all we're here to do. We talk about purpose. That is the only purpose. The fourth one is prosperity versus poverty consciousness. So spiritual perfection, and this is one of the free spirit is actually one of the saboteurs in my prosperity course that I have witnessed over and over and over again, specifically when it comes to healers, where they believe that that their gift is just to help people, and it's not about the money. And I'm going to invite you to consider that money is an amplifier. It's an exchange of energy. And in fact, truth for me, what I have learned over the years is that the more someone is willing to invest in themselves, the bigger the transformation is going to be. Their transformation begins when they decide to invest in themselves. And it's just been a truth in my coaching business. In the days when I was charging $200 for a 6-week program, maybe 2 out of 10 people would fully show up and get results. And now when I'm charging $10K plus for a 3 to 6 month program, you better believe those people are going to find a way to fully commit to themselves. And they're going to get the best out of that experience. And I have the tools and the resources to share with them. So they're going to show up and make massive changes in their lives. It happens all the time. Whether it's their health, their business, every time. Because our values are reflected by where we put our time and our money. So we want to make sure that our time and our money, our investments of time and money, are reflective of our values. So it's important to understand your money saboteurs. If you don't know what those are, you can listen to my podcast episodes around money saboteurs, and we'll drop that link in the show notes. There's the martyr, the free spirit, the fixer, the tyrant, the saver, the free spirit, and the people pleaser. And so really understanding and recognizing that money is just a reflection of our inner belief system. And you'll probably begin to notice that sabotaging behavior shows up in other relationships in your life. Versus prosperity consciousness, which is not about the ego at all. Poverty consciousness there's also the victim, is the consciousness of something's wrong with me. I can't have what I want because I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I don't have the money. Versus the prosperity, which sees the bigger picture. How can I increase my capacity to receive? What can I create in order to continue amplifying my values into the world and creating a ripple effect? And understanding that true prosperity and financial well-being, there are many different levels. And we talk about this in the prosperity course. There are many different types of income. There's the income where we work for it, which is where most people are in the middle class. There's passive income, which is the level that wealthy people get to when their money works for them. And there's income for those of us that are middle to upper class, which is probably the majority of people listening to this podcast, although I've supported many people into increasing their financial freedom. Now, financial freedom to me means more income coming in than what is going out without having to work for it. So allowing your money to work for you. There are 4 levels to financial freedom, whether you're an executive or an entrepreneur, employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. And so recognizing where you are, releasing the beliefs, the stories, your money blocks, understanding that your money blocks, we talk about those in the prosperity course. We're going to drop the link to the prosperity course. In 2024, it became an opportunity for you to take the course self-guided called Prosperity Embodied. Once a year, I run the group program. We're just about to finish our prosperity mastermind for 2024. There's also a retreat that I host once a year that's super powerful. We hosted our last one in St. Augustine, Florida. Before that, it was in Hawaii, so stay tuned for that. However, if you're ready to make changes now, you can join Prosperity Embodied at any time. The self-guided course to increase your capacity to receive, increase your financial freedom, heal your relationship to money, your money origin story, release your money blocks, understand your money saboteur, understand your money love language, your money wellness, all kinds of really good stuff. And I found the reason I created this course because I went through my own struggle with my relationship to money after experiencing betrayal in my business in 2020. But if you're a person who says, I don't have the money to do that, and it's something that you want to do, then you need this course. You're choosing to keep yourself small by believing that you don't have money because you don't understand that it's available to everyone equally at all times. You just have to be ready to step into that level of consciousness, which is an energy of trust, so that you can start to make decisions from a place of realizing that you have access to making the choices that you want when you have a healthy relationship with the energy of currency or money. That's all it is. It's an energy. It's a currency. It's a vehicle for change. And that's why I felt it was important to teach that in my 5-element wealth and create a prosperity course, especially as my work began to attract more entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs and also the executives that I've coached that have what people call a side hustle, but I call it a side passion, is the ability to create this extra abundance, financial abundance, doing things that they love from a place of trust. But the 2 blocks that keep people from doing the things they want to do is the belief that they don't have the time or they don't have the money. And I call BS on both of those. It's not something that I believe or embody. I believe we are the source when we choose to take ownership of our time and money. And what you choose to do with those decisions clearly tells God and the universe and your life and the future version of yourself who you want to become. Every choice, every investment you make is putting out into the world, this is what I believe I am becoming. And you have choice in that. So when you say no to things, remember that. When you say yes to things, remember that, because every decision is creating clarity and momentum forward on the path of the person that you become. It tells you how much you believe in yourself, how much you're willing to invest based on how much you believe in yourself, what level of change and investment you're ready for. And always choose to put your time and money with someone or something that is showing you the path that you want to go on. And here's the key: without attachment, because they are holding the space for you as the teacher, but you get to have your own path. You get to have your own journey, because yours could be better. It will be, because it will be uniquely designed for you. So spiritual perfectionism is letting go of that idea that money isn't spiritual. Beliefs about wealthy people being greedy or selfish, shame around debt, the belief that you have to work hard for success. Our current education system in this country, and I am a patriot. I love our country. I was in the military. I think we live in a great country. I've been to 45 different countries, and we live in an amazing country, and it's not perfect. You can create and be whatever you want. But when you step outside of the box, you will experience true freedom. And I'm a person who lived in the box. I went to a military academy. I worked corporate. I was in the military. Like, I was so inside the box. It felt so good and so safe to put all of my trust and loyalty into something that wasn't me. But when you put your trust and your loyalty into the true expression of who you are, you will start to find freedom. The hard part is that what we are taught from a very early age in school and probably from our parents keeps us in the box because that's what's better for our country. You have to find your own path. You have to find what works for you. And this is the difference between comfort and freedom, between consumer consciousness and creator consciousness, between an entrepreneur and somebody who wants to stay comfortable working corporate. Now, there's no judgment on either, but recognize where you are and learn to amplify and be true to what you really want in your life. Are you the growth mindset? Are you the fixed mindset? Are you going to make changes in your work environment? Are you going to create change in the world through your job? Are you going to create change in the world through your business as an entrepreneur? Because prosperity consciousness is available to everybody. Whether you're an executive or an entrepreneur. Now, the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is there's a lot more freedom because there's a lot more space to create. There just is. And there's a lot more space to create more freedom financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And you know if you're born to be this person or you're not. It's comfort versus freedom. And it's a tough choice. I have had so many moments throughout my entrepreneurial career, which I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years, where I have thought, gosh, I could just go back and work corporate for $100,000 a year and it would be easy. But what would it cost me? My soul, because it's not who I was born to be. Next, we're going to expand on this idea in understanding your level of spiritual growth through empath versus narcissist. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when we open up to this higher level of consciousness, we become very aware that we are empathic because we become very aware that we're connected to everything and we begin to see, sense, and feel everything that's going on around us. You may have been somebody who was told you were too sensitive when you were little. And this has been quite a journey for myself and also as a parent to my daughters. And I've done several podcasts on the wounded badge of empathy. Are you a codependent empath? And what I will say around that is just noticing where you are in your spiritual journey. And is your empathy serving you? What does it say about you? What does it mean about you? Is there a belief that it means that you're enlightened or you're spiritual? And is there ego in that? Are you highly empathic because you have a need to, you want to be seen by others as deeply as you see them because you're acutely aware because you're living in this, higher state of consciousness, because there's ego in all of that? Are you highly empathic because it's easier to be in somebody else's pain than your own? Are you highly empathic because you don't know your own worth and you just subconsciously become a martyr for taking on other people's experiences? Are you highly empathic because you don't believe or trust in yourself and you're always looking for the answer outside of yourself? Those are tough questions. Really tough questions, and I've been through all of them. I've done a lot of work around not being highly empathic and realizing that a large amount of being highly empathic and sensitive, and I mean all the clairs, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant to being pulled into trauma vortexes. That has been my experience, to having an energetic health crisis, until I finally realized that all of that was coming to me so that I could decide to stand in my own sovereign energy as a lighthouse, not to take on everything else from everyone else, because when I did that, I couldn't shine as brightly. I was subconsciously being a martyr, thinking I was, quote, a channel for healing. And if you're in that space right now, I invite you to really sit deeply with what does that say about you? What is the idea or the person that you think that you are, being so spiritually evolved that you're a channel for healing? And where is the ego in that? And I get that these are tough questions. And then on the other side, what really broke the chain for me was realizing that the people pleaser in me, which is very common for empaths, attracts narcissists. And going through an extremely painful narcissistic friendship in 2020 and experiencing betrayal, where I had to really reevaluate, how did I attract this? What am I here to learn? To come full circle and understand that when we enter a relationship from a wounded place, subconsciously, that energy can expand. And so people come into our lives to reflect back to us the parts of us that need to be healed. And it's not fun, but we get to. We can choose to avoid it. We can choose to lean into it, which is what I've always done. Because what's on the other side of it is that we rise up. We learn, we rise up. We create. We share, we grow. We can teach others. Create that space for the people who are 5 years behind your own journey, to help them, support them where they are. And letting go of the ego so much to know that not everybody who comes to work with you is ready for what you have to teach. And having the resources available around you so that people can meet who they're ready for. I did a podcast on spiritual narcissism because this is a really delicate conversation. So many people who are on that path to personal healing get addicted to their own healing. And it's sneaky because they're admitting that they have faults, but then they're addicted to the healing. And in some ways, it becomes all about self again. Self, quote, enlightenment, self-realization, actualization, the addiction to becoming the better version of yourself. And I've been trapped in that my entire life. The difference is the knowing and the releasing of the expectation and the ability to witness and observe myself and find the balance of, there isn't anything I have to do. Everything is a choice, and no choice that I make means anything about me. It's a choice from a place of freedom. It's not, if I do this, then I become this, or if I do this, then I get this. It is not, those equations, for somebody who loves math, are not a part of true spiritual path. Because the true spiritual path is acceptance. Letting go of the idea that you have to learn something or be something. Or even as a coach, to teach others certain things. That was a huge one for me, was realizing that not everything that I have learned needs to be shared with everyone. And so keeping the sacredness of those experiences, which is hard to do. It's complete releasing of the ego. Keeping the sacredness of those learnings and that wisdom for the right time and the right experience. lastly, we're going to close the conversation with purpose versus passion. Now, this one is really interesting because in my prosperity course, I actually have an entire module labeled Passion to Prosperity. So this is the opportunity for us to recognize, am I avoiding or bypassing the hard things that I don't want to do? The discipline that is required to evolve and grow because I keep choosing to follow my passion. And these are things that I talk about. These are things that I say, follow your passion, do what you love, get paid to do what you love. And when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, when we talk about the energy of devotion versus discipline, devotion being very feminine, discipline being a little bit more masculine, both are required for true prosperity. We came here for a purpose. We may not like everything that is required of us to live our purpose. I want you to sit with that for a second. I'm going to share a huge one of mine. I know that my purpose is to write and to speak. And speaking is not something that I want to do, but it's something that I know I'm here to do. I've been facilitating retreats and workshops as the gateway to speaking, and I have a couple of amazing events that I'll be speaking at this year. The She is Fierce event, the Women's Wellness Fest, that I'm super excited about, and that's where it's my purpose, but not my passion. So, spiritual perfectionism, spiritual bypassing can show up when we believe that we can just follow the things that we love and then it's going to create prosperity, when in fact, it's both. Sometimes it means doing the things you don't love. It's the difference between being a coach or a retreat facilitator and a business owner. As business owners, there are things that we have to do that we don't want to. No, we can contract those things out, such as taxes. But the more ownership that you have over the flow and the energy of your business, specifically the financial currency flowing through it or in your home, the more intention that you give to that energy, the more it expands because it's ownership. So you can contract things out. I have 3 virtual assistants that help me with social media. I don't love social media. And I still choose to show up every week. Now my assistants take parts of my podcast and create a post out of it. So it's all everything that I've already done. They're just taking the work and creating the post, and then I go back into my social media and I connect with the people who are following me. But I don't want to do the work to create the post and to post it because I don't want to do it at the time that it needs to be done. I like to batch record. I like to time block based on my energy levels. But it's shifting that ownership in that space and taking up more space to shift, which I've shared with you many times on my podcast. I made this shift in 2018 from coach to business owner. And that was one of the secrets to going from $25,000 to $30,000 a year to becoming a 6-figure business owner, was taking up more space, taking ownership of the energy in my business, the finances, the quarterly plans, the reviews, of hiring contractors to support me, taking up space through a podcast, taking up space through publishing 2 books. So when we talk about purpose versus passion, letting go of the trap of spiritual perfectionism, believing that you're only here for one or the other, and believing that there's a purpose to chase by what you do when actually your purpose is just who you are. And finding that balance to have the discipline to take the aligned actions on the things that are going to help you embody that expression of God's love, that purpose, and taking those actions that you don't want to take. For me, in the next month, it's gathering information for my tax accountant. It's not exciting to me. And I've tried several times and the reason it's not exciting is because I've invested a lot of money into having people support me with my taxes. And I've been in moments where I'm like, oh, I get to do this. It's exciting. I get to see all the money that came in and all the money that came out. But truthfully, it's not something that I truly, truly enjoy. I enjoy people. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy creating, and I enjoy leading. I don't necessarily enjoy all of the parts of being a business owner. And although I teach wellness leaders and coaches how to create businesses, I focus just as much on the entrepreneur, the mindset, and the well-being as I do the strategy of the business. Because my gifts are really in understanding people, helping people to shift their mindset, helping them rise up through their limiting beliefs. And it needs to be balanced with that masculine strategy of business tactics. It's like when you create the space for a retreat, I love the transformation, the connection, the embodiment, the joy, the dance, the yoga, the conversations, the partner circles. I love creating the retreat, and part of creating that space is creating that container of legal, logistics, ethical boundaries, having the right support. Those aren't the things that I love to think about, but those are necessary because everything needs balance. So to recap for today, how to avoid some traps of spiritual perfectionism. We talked about diet, vegan versus consuming animal protein, and really just giving you permission to notice what your beliefs say about you. What does your body need? And give yourself permission to give your body what it needs nutritionally at different stages in life. We talked about beliefs around religion versus spirituality and spirit versus science, noticing judgments and beliefs that come up around that. Learned practices versus inner wisdom. We talked about ascension versus embodiment, noticing where, although ascension is transcending is important, also noticing when it can become spiritual bypassing or avoidance of the human experience, and the growth through the embodiment of that higher energy. We talked about prosperity versus poverty consciousness, the importance of understanding the currency of life through financial well-being, but also prosperity is love and health. It's increasing your capacity to receive its embodied trust, and the financial piece is also part of it. Understanding your money blocks, your money saboteurs, your receiving blocks. Understanding the frequency of prosperity and wealth and abundance through nutrition, through love, through intimacy, through the whole spectrum of receiving. Understanding that when we're on a spiritual path, we're going to go through many stages where we really awaken our gifts, and there's ego in that. We notice that we're empathic, we're intuitive, we're clairsentient, clairvoyant. We can see and hear so much more when we step onto that spiritual path, and there's ego in all of that. I personally no longer offer intuitive readings, or I'm very discerning about energy healing sessions because it can be disempowering. there is an ego in the intuitive guide or healer that says, I can tell you this and I can fix this for you. I don't believe in that anymore. And then lastly, understanding purpose versus passion and the balance of sometimes in order to live the life that we're meant to live, it requires us to be on purpose, which is not always in our passion. It requires discipline and devotion. It requires structure and flow. Thank you so much for joining. I'd love to hear how this show landed for you, what you took away from this conversation, and I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Aloha.
The content of this podcast is to educate, inspire, and inform you of pathways to an embodied healing self. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice from your medical doctor, therapist, registered dietitian, or nutritionist for any questions you may have regarding your diagnosis or condition.
Hello, friends, and thank you so much for joining again each week on the Body and Soul Wisdom podcast. I am so deeply honored to share this space with you every week. I know that there are many other podcasts that you could be tuning into, and our community is expanding and growing more with each new episode. I'd like to invite you to come on over to jenmons.com/tribe and receive some of the wonderful gifts that we have for you. A meditation bundle, energetic alignment, 5-element wealth, prosperity consciousness. We have a ton of different gifts available for you to enjoy. Now, we have one small favor to ask. In order for this podcast to get into the hearts and souls of like and light-minded people, we need your support. We would love your review and would love it if you'd head on over to jenmons.com/podcast to leave a review or leave one on iTunes so that we can continue to share the love beyond out into the world. Thank you so much again for joining in. We'll see you next week.